It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. Good morning to everybody out there. Gosh, it's 6:33. Some of you are having your first sip of coffee. Now, one of those people might be Senator Mark Johnson. Mark is on the phone with us. How you doing this morning, Mark?
I'm great. It's probably my third sip, Paul. But,
third sip.
You usually have me in the 7 o'clock hour, so it's a little unusual for me.
I know it is. I really, really appreciate you getting up.
Sure.
All right, so Senator Mark Johnson, this is we got the session starting on Monday. I know you're excited about it, and I also see that we have a bill here that's been filed. Senate Bill 52. What can you tell us about this bill that you're hoping to get passed?
Well, in concept, Paul, it's very simple. I, of course, learned that someone once said no good deed goes unpunished. Well, no good bill even survives the scrutiny of the lawyers and the other smart people that look at things. But in a nutshell, Senate Bill 52 would take away any future pensions, state pensions, from wrongdoers, and this would include the elected representatives, the senators and state representatives who may qualify for pensions that have been in the news over the last year or so, convicted of somehow or another taking bribes or misappropriating GIF money, and no reason for us to go repeat their names again, but your listeners know who I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And it would also include any unelected official, any state official that misused their office for personal gain and was convicted of a felony. It would take away their state pension. And now, when I said that you never know where you're going to go with these things, they're never always simple, but we may have to tweak the bill a little bit. There's some question about the constitutionality of taking away the money that they actually paid into the system. So we may have to tweak that. Some states have tried to do that. Others have said, no, you can't do that. So we're going to follow what seems to be the proper precedent in Arkansas. And the other thing we have to be concerned about is that we want to make sure that nothing that we would do to the pension system would affect their status with ERISA and with the federal government and the IRS, things like that. So,
definitely. You got to make sure that all that
yes,
fits
sir.
together in the puzzle. But so you're telling me right now that these politicians that are in jail, they're still going to get a pension?
Well, under current law, they would, and of course, I hate to say it this way, but the poster child for it is former State Senator Nick Wilson from Pocahontas, who was convicted of federal crimes, went to prison, and was able to retire and was drawing his pension while he was in the federal prison.
Wow!
And to the best of my knowledge, is still drawing his pension. So, in those days, elected legislators received triple credit for every year they served. So every year they served in the legislature, they got 3 years credit. That's since been changed. They get 1 year credit for every year. But that allowed a legislator with 10 years of experience to qualify for 30 years worth of benefits. So let's just say that former Senator Wilson had a pretty good pension and is still getting a good pension from the taxpayers that he stole money from. So,
oh wow,
this is one of the things that I saw. Paul only made one real promise as far as legislation when I ran for this seat, and that is I would do something about ethics. Well, life is a series of incentives and disincentives. I normally wouldn't get up this early in the morning, but I had to. But the incentive was I got to talk to Paul Harrell and to his listeners. So,
do kind.
But the incentive is, yes, you work hard for many years as a state employee and you get this pension. That's a good thing. And, 99.99999% of state employees are in that category, within that 0.00001% that wants to use their office to steal from the taxpayers or to sell influence or the things that some of these legislators were convicted of. There's no reason for them to be rewarded with the same way that hardworking state employees and legislators, in some case, that have actually earned a small pension.
Yeah, and you know the state employees who are towing the or who are doing the right thing, I guess. These other guys give them a bad name. So I think this is a great. I'm going to read the title. This is the title of Senate Bill 52 by Senator Mark Johnson. You got some good sponsors with you. Senator Ron Caldwell is on this bill with you in the Senate.
May I interrupt you, Paul, for just a moment?
Yes.
A lot of people may know Senator Caldwell was in a terrible accident.
Yep.
It was a horseback riding accident. He actually is home in Wynn now. He was able to go home, but he spent about 3 weeks in the hospital. Serious injuries, very close to being life-threatening or even threatening paralysis. We think he's going to be okay. He'll probably be in the session in a wheelchair. But I visited Ron in the hospital in Little Rock and told him I was working on this bill, and he asked to be a co-sponsor.
Wow.
And I haven't had a chance to really visit with some of my other colleagues who I think probably will join me as co-sponsors. But Senator Gary Stubblefield, right after I introduced Senate Bill 52, introduced a similar bill. So you can tell we were thinking about the same thing. So I think once we hash this out, we'll come up with something even better and more co-sponsors.
Good.
But I apologize for interrupting you, but I wanted to give a shout-out to Ron and thank him and wish him speedy recovery.
Absolutely, and I certainly echo that sentiment. In the House, your sponsors you've got the state representatives Grant Hodges and Mark Lowry.
Yes,
also in good company there. The title reads, "An Act to Amend the Law Concerning Retirement Benefits to Prohibit Collection of Benefits by Public Retirees who are convicted of a felony offense arising from official actions as a public employee and for other purposes." Now, Mark, I think this is good, and I think it's good that you're going about this from the to disincentivize this corrupt behavior. However, I will say that there's also the incentive. There are still incentives there if you can get away with it and make a lot more money than maybe you'd even make with a pension. So, are you hearing anything else to try to reform the ethics of how things are done?
Well, Paul, I think the strongest incentive for someone who, and this might even apply more strongly to the people who've spent many years, working, as a state employee in the bureaucracy. They work 20, 25, 30 years, and, they're looking forward to that retirement and that security. If you take it, just the prospect of taking that away, I think is a much stronger disincentive than fines and possibly even jail time, considering that for white-collar offenses, they're just generally, frankly, let's be straight, the jails are reserved for the really dangerous people, and a lot of these people don't serve much time in jail. But when you say all that thing you worked for many years to be able to count on when you're older, we're going to take that away if you steal from the taxpayers. And yes, there are a lot of other things that we can be working on and are. I'm looking at some other disincentives. Let me take just a moment and go on a slight tangent. Back in the summer, the Senate and I want to thank Senator Hendren and Senator Irvin, the other leaders in the Senate that convened a meeting of the entire Senate, a business meeting. And the Senate, of course, can't go into session unless the governor calls them until our regular session. But in the interim, initiatives were made to change the rules of the Senate and to add some stronger ethics rules, especially about disclosure of conflicts of interest. That's about as much as the Senate could do short of passing a law which would require them to be in session and the House to be in session. But some of those rules changes are very good. I'm really pleased with the work that the Ethics Commission spent in 2017 trying to put us on the path to cleaning up things within the rules. But, as some of my colleagues have said, this is like, lots are for honest people and rules are for people that follow. And a lot of these crooks that, we've seen over the last couple of years that have, a lot of the incentive for me to even run for the Senate was because of that shame brought on our state.
Yeah.
if they can stay under their rock and hide and not get caught, then they'll do these things. And so we had a state treasurer that took bribes in a cash in a pie box. I mean, there are ways that people will connive to do this stuff.
Yes.
So, I'm not so naive to think that we can fix all the problems by passing yet another law. But part of what I'm thinking is this one, I think, has some serious teeth.
Yeah, I agree. I think this one is good. I think it does have teeth. And like you said, you're really flipping the incentive thing, on its head. I guess I'm curious about the, a lot of people have talked about, okay, what about attorneys who represent clients before the legislature, but it's not really known, and they're making extra money by getting bills passed and that sort of thing. The loophole there. And I know some of the pushback was, well, we don't want attorneys to not be able to be down here. So I guess, are you hearing any more about going further than that? Are there any ideas out there? Because I think it's good, if they're attempting to change the rules. I'm not going to argue that that's a bad thing. That certainly is a good thing. But it still operates on the principle that we have to self-report, or other senators are going to have to report other senators. And that's something that could have been done this whole time, and it was never done for obvious reasons. I mean, you don't want to accuse somebody, a colleague. I mean, then all of a sudden, you could be ostracized or that sort of thing. So you get what I'm saying here. Are there any ideas to go even further?
Well, and Paul, I don't want to belabor the point. I don't think that, first of all, let me say that attorneys, for example, that's a little easier to define. It's very easy to define. If you're an attorney and you're in a firm, you can't be working on legislation that you're getting paid as an attorney for that from that entity. I mean, that ought to be an easy one, and I think we can do that even statutorily. I'm looking at that. I've got several of the legislative staff that are checking this out from the standpoint to look at. We haven't formulated a bill yet. One of the things, and I'm going to call it a loophole, that and how we get around it, I'm not sure. But Paul, I used the Nick Wilson example. I had stories told to me by people who would know that back in the bad old days, 20 years ago, that one lobbyist friend told me that he had a bill that would not come out of the committee that Nick Wilson was chairing, and he didn't think it was that controversial. He couldn't figure out why he couldn't get the bill heard, and someone sidled up to him in the halls of the Capitol and said, you need to send a $5,000 retainer up to, I mentioned the fellow who was Nick Wilson's law partner in Pocahontas. He said, then your bill will come out. So in a case like that, you weren't paying Senator Wilson. You were sending money to his law firm, but not to him. And see, then you get into a situation of a legislator, say it works for a large law firm, say one of the tall building firms in Little Rock. He has nothing to do with that entity. It's just someone in his 50-member law firm that's working on that. Now, which one is obviously the first instance is a bribe, but where do you draw the line to define that conflict? And that's one of the things that I'm trying to work on.
It's hard.
I think it's perfectly clear, Paul, that if someone is involved in litigation with a client and has an interest before the legislature, that lawyer should clearly, and I want to go into instances, one pops into my mind right now, but that lawyer should clearly not be allowed to participate in the debate or vote on that issue.
Did you say you don't want to go into instances, or you do want to go into instances?
No, I don't want to go into specifics.
Okay.
I don't want to name any names, but if someone is really paying attention, they might even have some ideas of some of what I'm talking about. And again, this is if you're out here and you're at a job in the sideline, you're a lawyer. That's, again, easy to define what a lawyer is. Now, let me show you the problem we have here, Paul. It's not big, but I think it's very indicative. My friend, Senator Larry Teague, is a small-town insurance agent. Now, do you want to set things up where, when we're discussing legislation relating to insurance, that he can't participate and give his expertise. I mean, we want a citizen legislature. We want people to be able to weigh in on things they've had life experiences on. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we don't want. I don't think the president of Prudential ought to be able to get up there, or the head of Blue Cross Blue Shield, or someone be able to get up there and serve in the legislature while they're receiving these benefits from.
Well, so here's the thing, like
it's all about where we draw that line.
Yeah,
it is.
Because see, I don't know if I can say this, but I mean, I know when I say I don't know if I should. I don't know if Larry. I've talked to Larry Teague before. I like Larry. He's a really nice guy, and I believe him to be an honest Democrat.
And I agree with you.
You know what I'm saying? He's
an honest senator.
Yeah, honest senator, honest man, right?
Mm-hmm.
I may disagree with him here or there. Maybe that'd be fine. The problem is, what about the next guy? And that's the thing, is we don't know who the next bad actor, who's the next person that's going to fall into this temptation of using their office for extra monetary gain.
Well, Paul, another thing I'm looking at, and this could come this session. I'm not so sure the time it's taken to put even something which I thought would be as simple as Senate Bill 52 together. We might not be able to get it done this session, but we've got to look at things both from the legislator side and from the I will say the lobbyist side, but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the companies that retain lobbyists or have interests in the government, the proper manner for them to disclose relationships. And the way we do it now, a lobbyist only says, well, here's my list of clients. Well, you don't know if they've got him on a $100 a month retainer, or, he's making, $250,000 a year working for that company. And there's a lot of responsibility, and one of the things you can do is look at other states, and that's a common thing to do. Is okay, what do they do in our neighboring states or any state? And states are, as President Reagan said, the laboratories of democracy. We will find good ideas and reject the bad ideas, but you can't. I think we all know we're not going to clean up all corruption. We've got to approach it one instance and one opportunity at a time.
It's interesting, and this is just a question that just popped into my head. I wonder if there's a correlation between the other states besides Arkansas that maybe have better ethics laws, or they do things differently. I wonder if they've got smaller governments than we do. That'd be interesting. That'd be an interesting question.
Now that's going to take some academic or possibly even radio talk show hosts with a lot more time on their hands.
I know
to dig that up. But here's the thing, Paul. And again, let's not kid ourselves here. The bad actors that we've talked about and seen over the last 3 years, they violated laws that were already on the books. That we didn't have to pass a new law. They broke the ones that were already there, and maybe we need to look at ways to keep them from even thinking about it. And that was my idea. Is yes, you might get away with this, but are you willing to risk losing something else over here, other than a couple of years of your life and $2,000? And that was the whole idea of my bill, is that if you're and let's think about it from a standpoint of not the legislator, but the person that works for a state agency in a smaller town that could take a bribe on the side, and the dirty cop, so to speak, and things like that. We have a very generous pension system for police officers because of the risk of their profession, and it's generally a short period. I think you can work 20 years and earn a pension as a police officer, and that's good. I'm not against that, but because of that, that's something that the threat of losing that would be much of an incentive to keep a potentially dirty officer on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, so it doesn't just apply to politicians. We're talking just all public officials. I think that's really good. And Mark, Senator Johnson, I just want to say thank you for being willing to talk about this and to admit that, hey, we do have a problem, and this is one way that we can, make it better. And so I really appreciate your work on this issue, sir.
Well, Paul, fixing things like this is a destination, not a journey. This is certainly not the last word on how to make Arkansas a little bit better, but I hope it's a step in the right direction. I really appreciate you asking me to be on your show.
Absolutely, and keep us posted if there are developments. Was certainly something that I want to follow during the session, and best of luck to you starting on Monday, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Look forward to seeing you at the Capitol.
All righty. Senator Mark Johnson, everybody, we're going to take a break. Back in just a moment.